The rain fell that morning like tears. I'd forgotten how to cry. Soft, persistent, the kind that whispers to your soul, stay in bed, hide away. My windows were clouded with droplets that distorted the world outside, much like the lens through which I'd been viewing my life for the past decade. 52 and alone in a house that echoed with silence, on a street where we all performed the same hollow ritual: wave, smile, retreat, Maplewood Lane. The name itself conjures images of warmth and community, doesn't it? But we were all just existing alongside each other. Parallel lives that never truly intersected. I'd wake up each morning to the same ceiling, make the same tea, stare out at the same view. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the window and wonder when I'd become a ghost in my own life. My hydrangeas bloomed blue in the garden that morning, heavy with rainwater, bowing under the weight like I had been for years. The weight of solitude, the weight of a life half-lived. The oak tree in my backyard swayed in the breeze, its ancient branches seeming to reach for something just beyond grasp. I understood that feeling all too well. I remember my chamomile tea growing cold, forgotten as I stared out at nothing and everything. My son David was buried in his city life, drowning in meetings and deadlines. We spoke once a week, stilted, conversations full of fine and busy that never scratched the surface of our hearts. My friends had disappeared into the vortex of grandchildren and retirement communities. I'd become an afterthought in everyone's story, including my own. Safiori, knock on my door felt like an intrusion from another world. 3 sharp raps that seemed to echo through my empty house, startling me from my trance. Have you ever hesitated before opening your door, sensing that whatever waits on the other side might change everything? That's how I felt when I saw Henry Thompson standing there, silver-haired with rain-speckled shoulders, holding a small package wrapped in simple brown paper and looking as uncertain as I felt inside. "Good morning, Linda," he said, voice warm but timid. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." I forced a smile, suddenly conscious of my unwashed hair and worn cardigan. "Not at all. Please, call me Henry," he said, and I realized I'd kept this man at Mr. Thompson for nearly 2 decades of living 2 doors down. Such a strange thing, the barriers we build without even realizing we're building them. He extended the package with hands that showed years of work, not the smooth hands of someone who'd spent life behind a desk, but hands that had created, built, lived. "I saw this at the farmer's market and thought of you. It's nothing much, just something to brighten your day." The weight of his unexpected kindness nearly broke me. When was the last time someone had seen me, truly seen me? Not as David's mother, or the widow down the street, or the woman with the nice garden, just Linda, a person worth noticing. "Thank you, Henry. That's very kind." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, rusty from disuse, perhaps, or from the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. He shuffled his feet, looked almost shy as he said goodbye, and walked back down my garden path. I closed the door and stood there, package in hand, feeling the strangest sense of anticipation. After he left, I unwrapped a ceramic planter painted, with delicate flowers, exactly what I would have chosen for myself. My fingers traced the patterns as something awakened in my chest, something I'd buried so deep I'd forgotten it existed, a flutter, a possibility, a reminder that I was still alive, still capable of being surprised. God, how starved for connection I'd been. How had I not realized the depth of my own hunger until this moment? That night, I placed the planter on my windowsill and stared at it for longer than I cared to admit. I kept thinking about Henry's eyes when he handed it to me. Kind, yes, but also vulnerable, like he too was reaching across a void, hoping someone would reach back. I baked cookies the next day, my grandmother's recipe, the kind with oatmeal and raisins that smell like childhood and comfort, a flimsy excuse to knock on his door, but an excuse nonetheless. When I stood on his porch, plate in hand, my heart hammered against my ribs like a teenager's. Ridiculous. I was a grown woman with graying hair and laugh lines, not some lovesick girl passing notes in class. When he invited me in for coffee, I hesitated at the threshold of something more frightening than loneliness. Possibility. What if this changed everything? What if it changed nothing? What if I'd misread his kindness entirely? "I'd like that," I heard myself say, and stepped inside. His house was warm, bookshelves everywhere, lined with well-worn paperbacks and hardcovers, with cracked spines, a fireplace with actual logs instead of a gas insert. We sat at his kitchen table, which had seen better days, but held a quiet dignity in its scratches and water rings. history embedded in wood. We talked for hours about gardens and distant places we'd never see, about books we'd loved and movies that had disappointed us, about the changing neighborhood and the new coffee shop on Main Street. And it was easy. That's what broke my heart the most. How easy it was to connect when I'd convinced myself connection was beyond me now. "These cookies are incredible," he said, reaching for his third. "You'll have to show me how to make them sometime." "My grandmother would be horrified if I gave away her secret recipe," I laughed, then added, "But I suppose I could make an exception." The days after felt different. Have you ever noticed how the world seems to shift when your perspective does? How colors intensify, how birdsong pierces deeper. The sun seemed brighter as it streamed through my kitchen window. The air felt fresher in my lungs. My garden, which had been my refuge, now felt like it was waiting for something, or someone. Was it always this way, and I just couldn't see it? Had I been sleepwalking through my own existence, numb to the beauty that surrounded me? I found myself glancing down the street toward Henry's house more often than I'd admit, wondering what he was doing, wondering if he was thinking of me, wondering when I'd turned back into a schoolgirl with a crush. Henry started visiting regularly, first to admire my roses. "They're spectacular, Linda. How do you get them so vibrant?" Then to learn how to grow his own. I showed him how to prepare the soil, how to plant the bulbs at just the right depth, how to water them properly. "Not too much," I cautioned, watching him with the hose. "They don't like to be drowned." "Like people," he replied, his eyes meeting mine with unexpected wisdom. "Too much all at once can be overwhelming." We found ourselves digging in the earth together, side by side, hands dirty, hearts slowly unearthing themselves. There's something intimate about gardening with someone. The shared silence, the common purpose, the understanding that you're both participating in an act of faith, planting something with the belief that it will grow, that the future holds bloom and beauty. The weeks turned into a montage of small, precious moments. Morning coffee on my porch, watching the neighborhood wake up. Afternoons spent weeding and pruning, our knees stiff but our spirits light. Evenings where we'd sit in comfortable silence, reading books or simply watching the sunset paint the sky in colors no artist could capture. "I've lived on this street for over 20 years, he confessed one day as we sat drinking iced tea, watching birds dart between trees, "and I've never really known my neighbors. I've always been a bit of a loner." I understood completely. "It's easy to get caught up in your own little world." "Too easy," he agreed, his voice tinged with regret. "You look up one day and realize years have passed, and you've barely spoken to the people who live feet away from you." His eyes met mine, vulnerable and raw. "I'm glad you moved in, Linda. You've made this place feel like home again." The lump in my throat nearly choked me. I couldn't speak, could only nod and hope he understood what I couldn't articulate, that he had done the same for me, that my house had been just a structure of wood and stone until our paths crossed, and now it felt like somewhere I wanted to be. We shared more than garden tips as weeks passed. We shared stories of loss, of dreams abandoned and regrets that kept us awake at 3 a.m. I told him about my marriage, the good years before the silent ones, the slow drift apart that hurt more than a dramatic ending ever could. He listened in a way few people had, as if each word mattered, as if my past was a map he wanted to memorize. He told me about Margaret, his wife, about their courtship during college, their struggles to have children, the life they'd built despite disappointments, about her illness, cancer, ruthless and swift, and the 2 years he spent watching her fade. "She was the love of my life," he said one evening, voice breaking as the sunset painted everything gold. "I never thought I'd find someone who could make me feel that way again." My heart ached for him, for us both, for all the love we'd lost, and the years we'd spent alone. "I understand. It's hard to lose someone you love." "I think she'd be happy," he whispered, "to see me spending time with someone who makes me smile." I laid awake that night, staring at my ceiling, wondering what unexpected turn my life had taken. Is this how it happens? Not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with a ceramic planter and coffee conversations, with shared gardens and quiet confidences, with two lonely people realizing they don't have to be lonely anymore. Then came the storm. It's strange how the universe tests us just when we begin to feel secure. It was late September, the leaves turning gold and crimson when the clouds gathered like an army on the horizon. All day, the air felt heavy, electric, like the world was holding its breath. By evening, rain lashed against my windows like it wanted in, and thunder shook the foundations of my home. When the power died, I stood in darkness, listening to the wind howl its fury. The candles I lit cast eerie shadows on my walls, making my familiar home seem suddenly strange and threatening. And then, a sound that stopped my heart, a crash, splintering wood, something terrible. I thought of Henry instantly, alone in his house with the massive oak tree in his backyard, that beautiful old tree that provided shade in summer and a home for birds. Could it withstand this rage? Without thinking, I grabbed my raincoat and flashlight. The rational part of my brain said to stay inside, that venturing out in this weather was madness. But some deeper instinct propelled me forward, out into the storm, rain instantly soaking through my clothes, wind threatening to knock me off my feet. I ran through the deluge, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly as I made my way down the street. My heart pounded in my chest, a desperate rhythm of fear and determination. And then I saw it. The massive oak, split by lightning, crashed through Henry's roof like a spear thrown by an angry god. "Henry!" I screamed, pounding on his door, rain plastering my hair to my face. "Henry, are you okay?" The moments before he answered stretched into an eternity. Every horrible possibility flashed through my mind. Henry injured, trapped, or worse. When had this man become so important to me? When had the thought of losing him become unbearable? When he opened the door, alive and unharmed, I nearly collapsed with relief. "Linda," he said, voice tight with worry. "I'm fine. But the tree—" "We need to get you out of here," I interrupted, gripping his arm. "It's not safe. But my house, your house can be fixed. You can't. You're coming with me." "What possessions do you grab when your world is literally falling apart?" He took some clothes, medications, a photo of Margaret that he tucked carefully into his pocket, protecting it from the rain with his body as we dashed back through the storm. Two people no longer young, fleeing from more than just the weather. By candlelight in my living room, soaked and shaken, Henry looked at me with eyes that had seen too much loss. "Thank you, Linda. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't." "Come? That's what friends are for," I said, handing him tea, sitting beside him. But even as I said it, I knew friends wasn't quite right. We were something more, something without a convenient label, something still becoming. The fireplace crackled, throwing shadows across his face. "This reminds me of a night with Margaret. During the hurricane," he said softly. "We were young, just married. The power went out for days. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was enough." I smiled, my throat tight with emotions I couldn't name. "She sounds like an incredible woman." "She was," he agreed, his eyes distant with memory. "Strong, kind, stubborn as hell, when she believed in something." Then his gaze focused on me, present and intense. "She would have liked you, you know. You remind me of her in so many ways." His words caught me off guard. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, like a girl receiving her first compliment. "Henry," he took my hand, his grip warm and steady despite everything we'd just been through. "Linda, I know this might not be the right time, but these past months with you have meant more to me than I can express. You've brought light back into my life, and I don't want to let that go." Have you ever felt your heart crack open? Not break, open, like a seed finally splitting its shell after a long, dark winter? Like sunrise after the longest night of the year? "You've brought light into my life too," I whispered, surprised by the tremor in my voice. "I didn't realize how much I needed someone like you until you came along." His smile was slow, tentative, like someone rediscovering a forgotten skill. "Then maybe we can figure this out together." "Together," I echoed, the word feeling foreign and wonderful on my tongue. The storm raged outside, but inside, something new was dawning. We fell asleep on the couch that night, hands still intertwined, too exhausted to move. I woke at dawn to find Henry already awake, watching me with a tenderness that made my breath catch. "Morning," he said simply. "Morning," I replied, and somehow those ordinary words felt like poetry. The days that followed were a strange mix of practical chaos and emotional clarity. Insurance adjusters in suits, making notes on clipboards. Contractors measuring and quoting and shaking their heads at the damage. We cleaned up debris and sorted through belongings, saving what could be saved, discarding what couldn't. Mundane tasks made meaningful because we did them together. Henry stayed with me during the repairs, his presence transforming my solitary house into a home filled with conversation and shared meals and the comfortable rhythm of two lives intertwining. "You snore," I told him one morning over breakfast, hiding my smile behind my coffee cup. "Impossible," he protested. "I sleep in perfect silence, like a gentleman." "Like a chainsaw, you mean." We laughed together, and it struck me how easy this was, how natural, how right. One evening, as the sunset blazed across the sky in a riot of color, orange and pink and purple painting clouds that seemed close enough to touch, Henry turned to me on my porch, his expression serious but hopeful. "I don't want to waste any more time, Linda," he said, his voice steady but vulnerable. "Life's too short, and I've already spent too much of it alone. I want to be with you, if you'll have me." Tears blurred my vision, turning the sunset into a kaleidoscope of color. "I've been alone for so long," I confessed. "I didn't realize how much I needed someone until you came into my life." He took my hand, his grip anchoring me to this moment, this possibility. "Then let's do this. Let's build a life together, whatever that looks like." "Together," I agreed, the word becoming our promise, our touchstone. We didn't rush. There was no need. We had found each other late in life, perhaps, but not too late. His house was repaired, but he spent more time at mine than his own. We talked about the future, about combining households, about traveling to places we'd both wanted to see, about growing old together. On a walk through the neighborhood that October, leaves crunching beneath our feet like nature's applause, Henry stopped suddenly beneath a maple tree blazing with crimson leaves. "Margaret would have liked you," he said, his eyes soft with memory. "She always said I needed someone who could keep me on my toes, someone with a kind heart and a strong spirit. That's you, Linda." I couldn't hold back my tears. "That means more than you know." He took both my hands in his, as autumn light filtered through leaves above us, dappling us with shadow and sunshine. "I know we're not young anymore, but I think we've got a lot of good years ahead of us, and I want to spend every one of them with you." When he kissed me, it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before, familiar and new all at once. The kind of kiss that rewrites your past because it changes your understanding of what was possible all along. I think about that rainy Tuesday morning often, how close I came to dismissing that knock as a delivery person or a neighbor borrowing sugar, how easily I could have missed the beginning of this chapter of my life. One small decision, opening a door, changed everything. What would you have done if it were your life? Stepped back from the precipice of possibility, afraid of falling? Or would you have done what I did, taken his hand and jumped? You know, people talk about love as if it's only for the young, as if our capacity for connection somehow diminishes with each passing year. They're wrong. The love that finds you later in life has its own flavor, richer, deeper, more complex, like a wine that's been given time to breathe. It's been a year now since the storm that brought Henry's roof down and opened up a space for us to build something new. We were married in my garden last spring, surrounded by the roses we'd tended, together. David came from the city, looking surprised but pleased to see his mother so happy. Henry's sister flew in from Arizona. It was small and perfect and ours. We live in my house now, our house. Henry's is rented to a young couple with twin toddlers who've brought new energy to Maplewood Lane. Sometimes we sit on our porch and watch them play in the yard, remembering our own younger days while appreciating exactly where we are now. Last week, Henry surprised me with another gift, not a planter this time, but a locket. Inside was a tiny picture of us on our wedding day, smiling like people who know exactly how lucky they are. "To remind you," he said, "that it's never too late for new beginnings." Life had thrown us both curveballs, loss, loneliness, a tree, through a roof during a storm, but we weathered it together. And as we walked hand in hand under the autumn sun, I realized that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings happen when you've given up on beginning again. Be honest. Would you have stayed behind your door that rainy morning, or would you have opened it to let unexpected kindness in? I did, and now I know that love doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives in a ceramic planter on a rainy Tuesday morning when you least expect it but need it most. Sometimes it grows slowly, taking root in the corners of your life until one day you look around and realize everything is blooming. There's a particular kind of courage in opening yourself up after loss, in risking your heart again when you know exactly how badly it can hurt. But without that courage, without that risk, we miss the chance to find what Henry and I found, That even after the storm, after the lightning and the fallen trees and the damage that seems beyond repair, there can be rebuilding, there can be new growth, there can be second chances, and they can be even more beautiful than the first.